Hey everyone, it's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and today I'm going to talk about the HELM Audio Bolt DAC amp. This is a USB-C DAC. It's also considered a dongle because it's this little USB-C cable with a headphone jack on the outside. This is a $100 piece, and you're going to find by the end of this review if that's worth it to you or not, but I'm going to cover all the specs, sound performance, how it stacks up against competition, just to kind of give you a rough idea. Now, I do want to start by saying HELM Audio did send this to me for review, so huge thanks to them. It's allowing us to cover more stuff and play with other gear and see how different products interact with each other. So big thanks to them. It won't affect what I say about the review. I'm always honest and open, but I do want to give thanks where I can. I will have a link in the description below, a generic Amazon affiliate link that supports the channel. Buy any way you want. I will have a link to the HELM Audio website. I get no kickbacks from that. It's just a standard web link because sometimes HELM Direct sells it for less than Amazon. So be sure to shop both before you decide where to buy from, in case that sways your decision at all. Now, the Bolt is MQA certified, which to some people that won't mean anything, and to others they're looking for MQA hardware certification, meaning that this does the MQA unfolding on the DAC itself and doesn't rely on software on your PC or whatever device you're connected to. So it's all native on the DAC. If you don't care for any of that stuff, it still does PCM up to 384 kilohertz, and then it does DSD 5.6 megahertz, also known as DSD 128. So there's a huge variance of modes that you can run the Bolt in. Now, there is a nifty little LED on the Bolt. It changes color based off modes. MQA is going to have a magenta color. If you're over 48 kilohertz, you'll be seeing a red color, and then anything at below 48 kilohertz will light up in blue. Now, as far as what you get in the box, it's very simple. You obviously get the dongle, which I already took out of the box, but on the opening experience, you get this little card that tells you about the product and this nice little pouch. The dongle is actually presented in the pouch, which has this really nice tension on it. It has a pretty strong grip, and the dongle comes in that. Now, they also give you, because this is USB-C, they give you a really nice feeling and looking USB-A to C adapter. So if you buy the Bolt and you only have USB-A ports, so let's say you're getting this for a desktop or an older laptop, you can plug that in no problem and it'll work just fine. Now, as far as what's inside, this uses an ESS Sabre DAC. It's the 9218A Pro. It measures well. There's been posts online. I don't have the equipment to properly measure SINAD and distortion levels. I can go by what they tell me. I can go by what other people say, but it's incredibly clean. That is the main reason behind the whole THX certification on the box. It's supposed to be clean, flat reproduction of sound, and that's been verified online. It actually has great measurements, and that's no surprise thanks to that DAC. Now, what's really cool about this, it's very compact. It's not as compact as an Apple dongle, which you can see a bit of a difference in size here. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's still going to take up a similar amount of space depending on how you're using it, but this isolates the actual DAC separate from USB power. They're not touching on the same board. This is supposed to help with interference and noise issues. Not that the Apple dongle is a noisy piece. It actually also measures well, but they did put some focus on the hardware design and not just put a good DAC chip in it and let it do its thing. Now, the output voltage varies based off ohm load, and if you're not sure what the output voltage means, some people may not be familiar with this. That's essentially how loud or strong the output signal is. So when you're below 150 ohms, which all of these headphones are, the HD 560S is 120 ohm, this will output a 1 volt signal. Now, if you pass the 150 ohm threshold and you have a lower or higher impedance headphone, this will go all the way up to 2 volts. There's no way to force 2 volts on sub 150 ohms, unfortunately. But what's interesting about this, this will lead us into the sound quality, is the US spec Apple dongle is rated at 1 volt as well, but this got noticeably louder on all of my headphones, regardless of ohm load. I tested 32 ohm, tested 120 ohm, and even though they spec-wise say they both run in 1 volt mode, I just got a lot more volume out of the Bolt DAC for some reason. So maybe I'm misinterpreting something, but this thing packs a punch. And that's going to lead me into the why you would consider this. So I've been researching this stuff a lot. I've been purchasing a lot of gear that's not sent to me. The Apple dongle I just got because obviously it's dirt cheap. It's $10 and it measures well. It's actually very clean, low distortion DAC. You're really not going to gain much on getting more expensive DACs, believe it or not. You need the power output, obviously, depending on your headphone, but this is a starting point as a reference for me. So when I compared it to the Bolt, the immediate difference was the performance capability. Now, you may or may not need or care for the MQA or the higher sample rate because you're just going to run, 44 kilohertz, 24-bit 44 or 16-bit 44, in which case you'll have a nice blue light. But I did notice that across the board, everything I listened to, this was just a more powerful, more capable DAC. Now, if that's worth the extra price premium over something like this, that's all up to you. I found that on some headphones, I can hit max volume on the integrated headphone jack on a laptop or phone, and the same thing with the Apple dongle. It just didn't give me the juice that I need. Now, if you add EQ to that, now you're starting to adjust your preamp gain, typically reducing it so you're not having too much distortion because you want to do your custom EQ to make a headphone sound the way you want it to. And when you start getting into things like that, having that extra power is super important. I touched on that with the DB12 amp. Not every headphone or IEM is going to need the extra power, but in a lot of cases, it's nice to have that overhead. Now, this works on a lot of platforms. It works on iOS, it works on Windows, it works on Mac OS and Android. There are different use cases or configurations you have to make or change depending on your device and how you're using it. For example, if I were to use Tidal on my Mac computer, I wanted to go in exclusive mode. And I did get inconsistent volume output. So when I plugged this into Mac and I was trying to use the system controlled volume, sometimes it let me and other times it was stuck at a fixed max volume, and I'd have to then be forced to use exclusive mode on Tidal. It's more than likely a bug with Tidal interfering with the audio because it's detecting that this is an MQA certified device. But just keep in mind you want to make sure that your settings are either taking advantage of your gear, your source, or at least performing the way you want, because you have some options there. The same thing happens on Android. If you're using it for Spotify, for example, the DAC isn't going to work the way you'd expect it to as far as like native volume controls. Usually you have to get some form of app to interface with it correctly, especially if you ever want to run the higher sample rate, stuff like that. Now, I mentioned clean output power. That should be an expectation from a dongle like this, especially when you have other companies that also make clean performing DACs. So this is measured at 0.0008 total harmonic distortion under 150 ohms, and then it increases slightly to 0.0013 THD over 150 ohms. So it's clean. Look, here's the thing. When it comes to sound quality, this is flat. They are not kidding. And I think that's an important thing to consider because some people buy amps or DACs because they want to color or change the sound. You get a cheap tube amp and it will color the sound, not always to your benefit. Sometimes you introduce other issues. In a lot of cases on the cheap tube stuff you do. Then Delta Sigma, which is what this is, it's a solid state DAC, typically measure really well. But at the end of the day, the measurements only take you so far. It's important how it sounds. And the best way I can describe this is it sounds incredibly clean and transparent. If I have a lot of different DACs and amps that I've compared it to, and for the ones that are known to be flat and transparent, this is performing almost identically. And I'm talking like full-size amp DAC stacks. So it kind of puts into question, like, do you need a full-size amp stack? Some people want that for extra features like extra inputs and outputs, the volume knob, even more power output, things like that. But in a lot of cases, a small dongle like this can make a massive difference on sound quality. Now, interestingly enough, because I have a lot of people on my channel that are into gaming, this does do TRRS pass-through, which I wish it was advertised more. I don't know why it wasn't, but I was able to use this with the microphone, and it worked for recordings. I did notice that the microphone preamp was very weak, so if you want to be heard loudly, you either need to boost it after the fact or just consider that your voice may not be as loud as going natively into a combo port, for example. But it does work, so I was able to use the VCR Model 1 and the microphone worked okay. I just had to max out the gain. But as far as musicality goes, look, I use them to power the Odyssey Euclid IEMs, which do benefit from extra power, but don't really need any extra power beyond what this dongle had. And then the Bolt powered the Hi-Fi-Man XS and the 560S to a volume louder than what I was comfortable listening to it on. So I wouldn't need a stack, even on $200 to $500 headphones. It's more than enough power. So it's super important to consider that because you want to factor in your total investment cost into audio. This is a great starting point, and for a lot of people, this is a great end game, provided that this interface, a single USB interface, is all you need to do what you want. Now, this does not work on things like a PS5, even though it's USB. I plugged it in, it's not detected there. But it drastically cleans up the output signal of a laptop and desktop. Obviously, depending on your machine, you don't want to just plug in expensive headphones on the front of a desktop case. The output of that is terrible at best. So something like this can totally transform your sound experience without going crazy on expense. And it also keeps your desk looking clean because this is just going right in the front of a USB hub or your computer, laptop, etc. So that also is something to consider, is the cleanliness and not needing to plug this in. Now, if you are running this portably and you're using it on a phone or a laptop, I did notice it does increase battery drain, of course, because it's siphoning power from your mobile device. Is it a game changer, like, breaking level of battery drain? No, but if you're using it all day, you can expect your battery life to decrease quite a bit compared to what you're used to. So I like this product. I think there's certainly a market for it because it's for people who like the specs and measurements of something like an Apple dongle, but just need more power. Whether you're in Europe, which Europe gets a 0.5 volt Apple dongle, it's very weak. And I know there are competitors in the $100 price range. I can't directly compare it to stuff like that because I don't own those. I'm sure you can do some research. But I think what Helm is offering is a great product. I love the travel case, the adapter, and it's sleek. It's just compact enough. It's very flexible with this little braided cord. And it's performed great. I've been using it on my laptop. In fact, I use it for headphone measurements because it's all I need, and it's very easy to set up and tear down. It's consistent. I'm always going to have this around. And I can travel with it. So I get a great listening experience on anything I'm using it on. Anyway, that about wraps up the review. I did like the performance. I think, I didn't get into like super technical sound review side of things because it's flat. It's not going to change things. It's going to sound great if your source is great and your headphones are great. It's not going to boost bass. It's not going to expand and add all these textures and micro details to your sound that you've never heard before, but it's not taking any of that away. And that's what I want to stress. It's clean, it's true to the source, it's flat, and it gets pretty damn loud. So with that being said, I hope you found this review helpful. If you have any questions, shoot me a comment below. I'll do my best to answer it for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe because the Odyssey Euclid review is coming along with some really sweet headphones. I have a bunch of new ones. I don't know if you could see some boxes behind me that I'll be coming out with soon. So thank you as always so much for the support. Don't forget to check us out on Instagram and Twitter because we're trying to grow that. And I'll see you next time. Bye.